Hey everyone, welcome back to the MHP Show podcast. I'm your host, Derek Vickers. On the MHP Show, we talk about anything and everything that has to do with mobile home parks, operations, crazy freaking stories. We do interviews, we do all that. And you can find us every Monday. We post a new episode on iTunes, Spotify, YouTube. You can check out the video version of the episode on YouTube. We do clips on Instagram and blah, 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 all that. Also, what we have is my free webinar and ebook at go.parkinvestingpro.com. Between the webinar and the ebook, it'll literally take you from the basics of mobile home park investing all the way up to getting and structuring your first deal and finding the money for that deal. So if you check that out at go.parkinvestingpro.com. But without further ado today, so I have another guest in the Zoom studio here, Mr. Garrett Smith with Vertical Equity Partners. How you doing, man?
I'm doing great, man. Thank you very much. All is good over here.
Yeah, dude, that's awesome. So Vertical Equity, you know, you can talk a little bit more about it, but you guys own and operate mobile home parks. Where are you guys at mainly?
Mainly, we have a small office in Plant City, and within that vicinity of about a half hour, we've got 5 or 6 parks, mobile home parks mainly, and some smaller apartment complexes from 19 to 25 units. And also going out past that, we've got a few in Lakeland. Just purchased a couple apartment buildings in Lake Wales, under contract also for another one apartment building in Lake Wales. Some in Brooksville and Hernando. But we've only got 330 units right now, 350 units. We just purchased 20 last week. Another small, basically infill project, mobile home type situation. 20 lots, only 10 were occupied. So trying to fill it all up with 20. So we've got 350 now. We're under contract for another couple of properties, and we're trying to, keep growing.
Yeah, dude, that's awesome, man. How are you guys finding anything to buy right now?
It's not easy, man. As you know, finding deals is always the hardest part. Everybody gets really excited. We learn how to raise the money. We kind of figure out how to manage the thing, but then it's going to finding a good deal. And you have to ask yourself sometimes, am I just trying to make deals just for the sake of doing some deals and getting some units? Or am I really trying to, do I really feel like there's some equity in here? And recently it's been a little difficult to justify the numbers. We started off purchasing some apartment buildings a few years ago, and we basically got priced out of those. They started to reach over $100,000 a unit, and we just didn't find much interest in them for what we could rent them for. So we've got a friend who owns about 1,000 units, mobile home units with a bunch of parks, and he kind of showed us the ins and outs and the cash flow. What you buy it per price for a unit versus what you can rent it for. The numbers just make so much sense. So we branched off into that about a year and a half, 2 years ago. We've purchased our first park. We've got 11 parks now. We're under contract for 2 more parks as well. And we enjoy the business. It's a good business. And pretty much that's what we focus on now. We do still buy some apartment complexes, like we're under contract for one now, but we really try to focus on mobile home parks.
Yeah, that's great, man. I know you guys own in great markets, because I know you guys got stuff around here in the same areas that we have stuff. And I mean that you can't, and I've looked at some of these more rural markets, and I just can't make sense of it. If I can't put a Facebook Marketplace ad out and I can't get 200 responses in 2 days, it just doesn't excite me. Like, I had a guy in our program that was looking at a park, and he's like, I got 30 responses in 10 days or something. I'm like, dude, that's not good.
Yeah, you want so many responses where you're like, why did I put this on Facebook Marketplace again? This is your phone blows up.
Well, yeah, because they blow you up, and then if you don't answer them, they find you, and then they're like, Garrett Smith, you asshole, for not responding. It can be annoying. But this is a question that I always ask here first on the show, and I know we jumped ahead a little bit, which is fine. But what was your first entrepreneurial journey?
Let's see. Aside from making flyers around age 10, putting them around my neighborhood and mowing about a dozen yards or so. Aside from that, later on in high school, I got the idea to do a little screen printing business. So I bought all the equipment and set it up. And my mom was like, I can't believe you're spending it was like $1,500 or so, and, as a 15-year-old, it was people probably even less than that or so. Anyway, started this website, started selling t-shirts. So that was one of the first ones. And then, in college, I started to purchase some houses, and right after college, started some other kind of businesses too. So I would say first we've been mowing yards as around 10 years old or so, and then making some screen printing t-shirts in high school too.
Yeah, that's awesome.
And then first
man.
year of college, my second year of college, I bought a rental house, and then it kind of started from there, really.
Yeah, that's cool, dude. And a couple of points on that. Like, man, you were smart enough in college to at least go buy a rental house. The only thing I knew how to buy in college was a couple of things I'm not going to mention, and beer.
Yeah,
and
right,
liquor.
right. I knew which gas stations would sell it to you, right?
Exactly. There was this gas station when I went to high school by a college, and this gas station, like, you could literally go in there and I was 16 and buy freaking kegs and take them. And they ended up
in high school too.
They ended up getting shut down, it's just crazy. But you at least had the foresight to buy a house in college, so I commend you for that. And so, then when did you get like your first multi-unit deal?
Let's see. Well, by the time I graduated college, I had 7 houses actually. I went to USF, and I ended up having about 7 houses in this one small little subdivision off of there.
Wow.
But my first multi-unit deal, off the top of my head, was I purchased a 4-unit plex in Seminole Heights. Gosh, I can't remember. When was that? In the recession. For some reason, I got lucky, started buying stuff in 08 and 09 when I was in school. But I would say my first multi-project I bought a few 4 quadplexes. I also stumbled on this commercial place that had a quadplex in the back and a commercial building in the front and a billboard. And I was able to get that owner financing. And then that was 6 units, so they're paying rent. And then after having that, it was all commercial building, leased it out to a restaurant, and there's still 4 apartments, and the billboard's still there. And then just by being in that area, I was able to buy the shopping center next door, which had 6 businesses in there. And then I put, ATM to try to make a little bit more money. And then, of course, ice machine and all this other kind of silly stuff. So doing those kinds of things, and then just stumbling upon mobile home parks and apartment buildings and things like that. Whenever you're trying to be hungry for a deal, things just come under your nose, and sometimes they make sense and you're not used to it, and then you end up liking it and kind of branch off into that way.
For sure. It sounds like you were just hustling. You're like, man, I can put an ice machine here, I can put an ATM here. Like,
trying to. It didn't have a lot of deals going on, didn't have a lot of money either. So I was like, man, I gotta squeeze this thing and milk it for all that I can. So I just did things like that.
Yeah, for sure. And so how were you funding these deals? Were you like,
those 2 were owner financing, but when I was in college, I purchased, like I said, 7 houses, and along that way, I was able to meet basically a private money lender, an individual who also had accumulated a large number of real estate and was now on the lending side. And I met him through a broker, this old Buccaneers player. I was like, hey, look, I'm looking to buy these houses. If you know anybody looking to lend, and by chance he happened to know somebody who was looking for a guy like me, who was, trying to work hard and come up, and who had some years ahead of him for investment. And so we did a couple of single family houses together. Those ones when I was in school. And then I started to kind of flip houses as well. And one day he goes, hey, I want to be your banker. So whenever you want to branch out to bigger stuff, show it to me and we can try to figure something out. So I just really got fortunate and met a guy, and did what I said I was going to do with him, pay him right, treat him fairly and all this kind of stuff. And he's been generous along the way.
Yeah, that's awesome, man.
And I think people too, you meet other bankers on the way too.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think there's something to say for that. And you said something interesting there, is that, like, there are guys out there. I have guys in our program. They're like, oh, I don't have any money. Like, how do I find people? Like, when you commit to something, like when you there's tons of wealthy guys out there that actually, like, they've got a ton of money, but they don't want to go knock on the door of a tenant and say, here, sign this lease, or here, you owe rent. Right. So there's value there. And like the people that have a lot of liquidity, they don't want to do that, and they like people on the come up, hungry guys, hungry girls that are like want to actually do it. You can attract those people in, and it sounds like you did, and I did somewhat of the same thing. And I always find it fascinating when I meet guys that are like just super hungry. Like I want to work with them and I want to help them. And so it sounds like you found something similar to that.
Yeah, I mean, one of the biggest indicators was probably willing to live in some of the apartment units of some of the buildings I would own. You know, I'm like, well, gosh, I got to live somewhere. You know, and the numbers make a lot of sense to live here. You know, it's kind of be on site, and I would do that for a couple of times. And as I would sell those places, I would do it to the next place, and then I was able to basically to just get bigger and bigger each time, and pretty much going along that way. But right, it goes a long way when people see you're hungry, waking up early, and carrying yourself properly, you know.
For sure. What time do you get up in the morning?
5:30 ish.
Okay.
I have a couple of young boys, and they usually wake up at 6:30, and so that little bit of time before then is kind of some of my golden time, or the day's getting started, it's still dark outside, I feel productive, I'm up.
Yeah, same, dude. I get up early, it's quiet, the kids aren't yelling, they're not papa, blah blah blah, feed me, give me toys, whatever. So I agree, dude. It's the best time of the morning when you're doing that. I wanted to circle back on something you said. You were talking about living in those units. Now, actually, I talked to Ryan Naris. He was on the show, and he was talking about how he went and lived in a mobile home. And, so I've stayed at a couple of our parks before because as we were turning them around. And so what did you learn about the business? Like, what were you able to learn from being there on site, on property versus, people that have never done that before?
You don't want everybody to know who you are, for one. Sometimes, oh, there's the guy who's going to fix things. Let me go get his attention and tell him about something that probably doesn't need to be brought to attention. That was one of the things.
Yes.
But I also learned that if you want to be in this, you really have to be in it 100%. It's not, you can do it part-time, but you're going to, what you're going to get out of it is going to be, part-time. You're only going to get what you put into it. And so I learned by doing, above and beyond and whatever I can until I just didn't have time, and I had to learn to delegate and all that stuff was another one too. I would find myself fixing things, and I realized my best time is utilized looking for deals and trying to raise money and stuff like that. I'm not best served fixing plumbing and things like that, but getting started, you've got to do those kind of things to save $50 or $100 or $200. But then for me, there becomes a point when you're like, okay, at what point is it $1 per hour where I'm like, I have to step away from this and do something else. So learning how to delegate as well was another good one.
Yeah. And that's not easy to do, dude. You look like, can you can fix anything basically?
Yeah, don't tell my wife, but yeah, I can fix a lot of things. Yeah.
Yeah. See,
but I like fixing things around the house and everything. Yep.
I can't. But that's about the delegation thing. So how hard was that for you to let go of these little menial tasks that you knew that you didn't need to be doing?
I'm still learning today. Yesterday, I spent more time than I should have on my computer tweaking this presentation type thing. And I'm not a computer whiz, there are somebody who can put this together like that. And while I can go make some calls or return some calls and emails, some other contract stuff I have to do and all that, I realize you do spend so much time doing that, and you're like, gosh, I really didn't get much done today. I did these other things, but what I needed to get done was that. So you're like, you have to do it,
Yeah, definitely. And what do you think that is? Because I hear this from entrepreneurs all the time. Doesn't matter what business they're in. And even I still deal with this. And there's always a level of it, right? Like you shed what you're doing and you do something else and you kind of get rid of that and move on to something else. But what do you think that is in entrepreneurs that makes it difficult for us to do that?
We sometimes want everything perfect, but we've also got to realize,
of course,
I've learned that you got to be okay with things being okay sometimes. One time when I was just getting started, I found myself driving around my properties, like a couple houses here and an apartment there. If I didn't have much going on, I would drive around them, and then I would find things to do. And that's good. They'll look good. But then here I am spending all this time I'm not going to make any more money by doing it like that. I just better utilize doing something else, realizing like, how come other people are doing deals and why can't I do the deals? Maybe I should stop spending my time, boots on the ground style and maybe chase deals in other ways,
Yeah, for sure. And I think I screwed up on that myself because I'd have a tendency like, hey, I got to be on the property. And I would go around the property, and then Miss Maria, this is an actual tenant in lot 30 in Pelican 1, was like, oh, Derek, this, and this. And you're like, oh my God, you're on site, you're in there, and you think it's an emergency. And so you like join the dramatization. And then you start, before you know it, you've been taking your time on this, and the other, someone's got a squirrel that won't leave or something like crazy. Then you're dealing
right, because they're your customers.
Exactly.
They're your customers. That's how you earn your living. And so you want to do what they say, and you want to make them happy. You don't want them to be upset. So it's like you have to try to draw that line in there. And the line's easier drawn when I'm not there doing, sticking my foot in it,
Absolutely. And I'm the same way. I want to help. I want to make sure they have a great experience. And I want them to I want them to know that we're not like that we're good landlords and we want to help.
Yeah, we're people too.
And it's so hard for me not to do that. Like if they need something, I'll call the maintenance guy and be like, dude, can you get over here to lot 25, and fix it, please, quickly. Right. And then it pulls them out of something else. So yeah, it's much easier in this business to draw the line when you're not there. I think that's key for our listeners to know, because if you haven't, once you get your first park, it's going to be your baby, and you're probably going to have to do some of that. Like, don't get me wrong, you're going to have to do some of that.
You got to do some of that. Yeah, everybody's got to do some of that.
Yeah, but and then at some point you have to stop, right? And what do you think that point is where you have to start? Like maybe it's a lot count, or what was it for you where you're like, all right, dude, like I've got to start delegating tasks?
I was getting behind because I was doing some of the work and trying to collect some of the rent as well. Mm-hmm. And then I was like, okay, I need to delegate one of these tasks. I can't spearhead the maintenance and all this and collecting rent and looking for deals. I need to delegate one of these things. So I delegated the rent collection part to a management company. And they did a decent job, but then I just realized I was talking to them all the time. I was still basically doing it myself. I had a hard time just letting them go of the reins and saying, do it. And so then it just got to an income point where I was like, how much would it cost to have somebody to delegate all of this stuff to, And so now when you lose sleep at night is the answer for me. When I realize it just takes so much of my brain power, then I have to just let it go. And so, but I'm at the point now where I have mainly one person I run about a lot of the stuff to, and then he has 3 other people who help with all of the property management and all of that. And that certainly made it a lot easier, and it's allowed me to focus on other areas I'm trying to grow. So I kind of do the outside, and my partner, he's got the inside, the management, the day-to-day, and that's how we run it now.
Got it. And it works better like that, especially if you really, delineate responsibility. Say you're doing this, and don't cross-pollinate that stuff. It works so much better. So so your park deals that you had, how did you find most of those deals?
Let's see. First one was a buddy of ours named Desmond, who owned a number of units. Somebody pitched him a park. He didn't want it. He knew we were interested in buying stuff because we bought some apartment complexes, and this mobile home park came available not too far. And he goes, hey, if you guys are interested, take a look and, let me know what you think. And so we were able to purchase 2 parks, actually. We contacted that broker, and that broker by chance happened to have another park that fit, a similar criteria at that time. So we're like, well, if we're going to do it, we might as well swing a big hammer, because I've learned it takes as much almost time and brain power to buy a 4-unit as it does to buy a 50-unit part. You still got to call the finance person X amount of times, and et cetera, et cetera. So we're like, let's buy them together. So we grouped them together. So we purchased these 2 parks from this one seller. One was in Zephyr Hills. It's a 31-unit park, mainly RV style, and the other one is a 21-unit park. with a pretty nice, decent house on it in Lakeland. Those two parks, and we operated those for a little while. So then, we're doing that, and we're like, okay, I think we can do this. Owning and managing apartment buildings, the maintenance is a lot less day to day compared to mobile homes when you own the mobile homes. And at this time, those came with a lot of the mobile homes. So we were fixing things and et cetera, and realized, gosh, how much are we spending here fixing these things? We know they got to be fixed. We don't deny that, but what's a better way to kind of spearhead this thing? So we learned our systems too. Tried to sell some units and still try to own some units. Just learn it along the way.
Yeah, for sure. So do you guys still do you guys try to turn all the units to tenant owned, or you still have some park owned?
We do have a number of park owned. I would say we're about 50-50. The ones that we own, we've put the effort into renovating them, and they bring in pretty good rent for us, what we consider. We've done the calculations, and if we sell it, yeah, you get a one-time payday of however much it is, or even if you lease it back to them, essentially your net monthly is the same. But we like to own some of them just because versus lot rent, it's twice or three times as much sometimes. And so if we have a park with maybe 30 units, we try to own 5 or 6 or 7 of them. And then the rest, we try to just do lot rent, but we're in no big rush to sell them either. We'll gladly renew leases and things like that too. But, but some parks we have to approach like we've got a clean house. We kind of we're learning along the way too. Like like this one we picked up, we realized we want half park owned and half tenant owned. But there's another park we've got where we realize, okay, we want to try to make it all tenant owned. And there's some other parks where we're like, oh, it's better to have it all park owned. So it changed. It's a little bit here and there, but for us, our average is about 50-50. We know the banks, though, typically value it based on as if you didn't own them. And so there's definitely some cons to owning them. Yes, your monthly income is good, but if you're not looking to refinance it or sell it, that's one thing. But you've got to pay attention to that too, because that's another strategy.
Yeah, for sure. And it's been, it's interesting as I've went back and forth and thought about this because I've seen, I know what the rents you can get on these things and, in the I-4 corridor, it's pretty damn high.
Right.
And so, lot rent's relatively high in these areas too. And it's like, what's the balance there? I've thought about it. Like our motto has always been, let's keep it as clean and simple as possible. Lot rent's level. Everybody pays the same. Everyone's lot rent. We have the parks in Tampa. We probably have between single family homes and apartments or efficiencies that just came with them. Probably 20 units we ended up having.
Right.
Do you guys get you guys get the weird stuff too?
Everyone has one.
Yeah.
Every unit has a house or a big, huge garage that's not necessary, or some little efficiencies, 3 together, where they share walls and stuff like that. You're like, well, that's just what it is, Or sometimes you find some mobile homes that are multi-units and stuff like that too. And sometimes it works out. Sometimes you're like, okay, what's the best utilization here? What are we better doing? Sometimes we've purchased them where they come with a home, and we've even gone through the whole process of getting a survey done and out doing that parcel and kind of recouping some funds that way as well. So we've tried to use it to our benefit in some cases also.
Yeah, and so you'll basically, if it comes with a single family home, you'll parcel that out and then sell it.
Yeah. At sometimes, in some situations, but it just makes sense because it goes to single family home. You're like, gosh, I could sell it for. Because the one I'm thinking of, it's it's kind of we fenced in the mobile home park, and yes, the home is there, and you can see the mobile home park, but there's a pretty clear separation, and it's in a desirable area of Lakeland. And so the home we recently sold it for around $250,000 and rented it for $1,000. And so we're like, well, we could rent mobile homes for that price, but we certainly can't sell them for that price. So we could sell it, recoup some funds, either put it back into the park, repay investors, or figure out some other things to do with it.
Yeah. No, that's good. And the unfortunate thing, like the single family homes that we have, like they're like one of them's literally right in front of the park. It's in the middle. You live in the park. You live in the park.
Yeah, we got some of those too. Where you're like, well, it's a pretty house. You just can't give it much credit. And there's not much else you can do with it.
No, right. And so actually one of the parks that we drove through earlier, this came with a single family home that was is a different parcel. It's not exactly a part of the park. And we did that. We ended up selling it to the funeral home next door. They had been wanting it. So that works when it works. But when the house is right in the middle of the park, there's just not much. You got to rent it and call it a day.
Yeah, we got also another one in Plant City. It's got a beautiful house with, hardwood floors, herringbone style in there. And it's just such a nice, house, but just in a mobile home park. So, but yeah, they're nice sometimes,
For sure. So have you guys looked at buying out of state at all? Are you going to stay in Florida, or kind of
we're under contract for one in Indiana that through Armand.
Oh, yeah. He told me about that. I think he told me about that.
Yeah. It's got a little storage component as well. It's got 58 pads, about half occupied or so. That'll be our first one. If we close on it, that'll be our first one out of state. We've been under contract for a couple of other ones out of the state, and it just didn't really, intrigue us enough to close on it. But we were learning that, at first we wanted everything within 2 or 3 hours, but we're learning, well, if you really want to get bigger, you just have to, keep putting the field goal further and further. And so now the field goal is, okay, we're willing to go to other states now. We feel like we've seen a lot of things around here, and if they came available, we'd be happy to get them. But we've got investors who are hungry, and we're hungry for growth too. So we're willing to go to other states. And so this year we'll probably purchase our first out-of-state one, and then next year we'll probably end up purchasing a couple other ones if we can.
For sure. And so what was that? So that park in Indiana, and I've looked in other markets like that. So what was that like? Okay, we can make this one work. Were the numbers so good? Was the location good? What gave you the confidence for that?
This had an unusual element that only applies to this area. My family is from near there. And so I would spend my summers up there. And by coincidence, I had this uncle who everybody looked up to. And he was a real estate guy. He owned some mobile home parks. He owned some storage buildings. He owned some farmland as well. He owned some apartment buildings and single family houses. And from the summers in high school going to college, I would spend following him for a week or two. He'd show me the ropes, how to write leases, how to show houses, and even construction work and all this kind of stuff. So I know he knows people over there. He's much older now and he's out of it. He's got a son who's in as well. But my whole family is from up there, and I go up there still about 4 times a year, give or take. And I know it's very easy to get to. I know its location. I knew it off of memory when it came up. And so my mom, I told her about it. She drove by and saw it, and she was like, it's not too bad, So I was like, okay, that means it's probably pretty good, So I, talked to Armand about it, and we were able to make some terms for it. So I went up there the following week, and it's easy to get up there too. I can justify it, seeing family, etc. So fortunately, it's already in my schedule and routine to go up there more than once a year. So I'm able to see it. And it seems to have some decent management in place as well. And really, it's all lot rent as well there, about 90%. Eventually, it'll be all lot rent. So essentially, based on our experience with our parks here in Florida, there's some parks we don't see very often, and that's okay. And so I believe you can manage them properly out of state. And, I see other guys who are bigger and more successful doing it. So I think, we can probably do it as well.
Yeah, for sure. And especially, if you have someone that doesn't know the business, they say, oh yeah, the park's okay, it's not bad. Then it is okay. Because from what we see, our definition of okay is probably,
pretty good. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
Sometimes my parents, I've shown them a place and they're like, we're not driving through there. I'm like, okay, all right.
This is nothing.
Yeah. I'm like, come on, it's nothing. Yeah.
Oh, yeah. This, I don't know if you know it, in Orlando on Orange Blossom Trail. It's called Palms. Mm-hmm. It's park I'm talking about?
Orange Blossom Trail. I don't know that neighborhood.
Oh, boy. So this was like I've never been scared driving through a mobile home park before. But this one's scary, dude. It's literally 96 units, and it can't be, it can't be 3 acres. Maybe not
oh my God.
Dude, so you drive in and you have to back, if you turn down the roads, you have to back out. And they're all those old 50s and 60s 8 wides. They're, It's
crammed
nasty.
in there. Gosh, yep.
And we were actually going to buy it. We were going to be crazy enough to buy it and try to turn it around, but we backed out. It was just too much. And we bought some nasty stuff.
Sometimes they're not worth the squeeze, but we like the dog ones, but sometimes they're just like, goodness, it's such brain damage sometimes. Yeah.
Yeah, Tampa 3, and I don't know if you knew it before. It was called Lazy Oaks on Nebraska. You know that one?
I have driven that. I believe there's like 2 or 3 continuous or pretty close to each other.
Yeah. They're right. You got Tampa 3, Pelican 1 and 2 there, but Tampa 3 it looked like Hiroshima when we walked in there.
Yeah, I've seen some other ones on that street, and I'm like, this buddy, I got a lot of these things. This buddy goes, "Don't risk what you have for something you don't need." And I drove the one over there, and I was like, I don't need it. I don't need it.
Yes.
But nowadays, I would probably take it because I've got a little more experience and a good crew. But there's sometimes when you're like, gosh.
Yeah, for sure. And when you were talking about buying that park in Indiana, it was interesting because you were talking about, and I think this is important for our listeners here, is that knowing the good contractors in the area, knowing that you have some communication lines in that area, because finding contractors, I got to tell you, it's not. When I got into this business, nobody told me that was going to be close to the top of the list, that finding and managing contractors.
It sure is. Gosh. And you got to go through a lot of them, and you learn the hard way. Typically, you think they're out there doing the right thing, and you're like, oh my goodness, and you built a whole schedule based on it, and it's a tough thing to do. Yep. It's a tough thing to do.
Yeah.
Managing those guys, because sometimes they get enticed to go to another job, and then there you are left with a construction site that you need some work done, and you got to do it, because you got bills too.
Yeah. No, it's unfortunate, and of course, I think we've all had to learn the hard way with these contractors for one reason or another, and it's just unfortunate. I never pay anybody up front anymore. I get multiple bids. We never because what I would do is find one that was doing good work, and then I'd give them too much work. And then they're overwhelmed. They overpromise and underdeliver. So I've learned that you got to find 3, 4, 5 good ones, and then just keep them just enough busy, not too busy.
Right. And the guys who turn the units, who do the floorboards and the flooring, those aren't necessarily the same guys who do the maintenance work. When somebody calls for us because we own some of these units or apartments where they've got something that's wrong, that's not the same guy. That's a different type of skill set, believe it or not. The guys who turn units, they're all right, let's get this thing tore apart and let's throw it back together. But sometimes the maintenance guys, you have to be a little more finicky to get things exactly right.
Yeah. And unfortunately, even it's just crazy to me. I feel like there's such a big opportunity in that business if you just get completely service oriented with your clients, because even with the bigger contractors, they've done great work. They've never screwed us over with money, but the service sort of, oh yeah, we're going to be great up front. And then it drops after, 3 months. Everybody
gets comfortable, so we believe that there's just turnovers as part of growth. It's just nothing negative about it. You just tell yourself, well, I'm going to find somebody better to replace them. And that's just the nature of the business. You can get bogged down with it as just, part of it, but you're exactly right. It's just, sometimes you learn the hard way. I've learned the hard way. You're right. Overload their plate, and you're like, well, now that I've come to think of it, you're right. I sure did give you a lot to do. And here I am real pissed off that you're not doing it right on my schedule. And yeah.
And they don't have enough guys, and then they start hiring guys off the street to do less work. Yeah, it's crazy. And it even blows my mind, but you're laying asphalt, you need to go out there and say, hey, is this 2 inches? Is this 2 inches of asphalt?
There's big things being done, and they need some oversight. You're like, yeah.
It blows my mind. And I think people getting in the business just need to understand that, because I thought when I got in, I thought it was just like, oh, well, I don't know how to do any of this stuff, so I can just get a contractor and, they're going to do it right. But that's not the case. And so I've learned so much about that side of the business and project management. I've developed those skills that I didn't have in the beginning.
On the fly.
So what do you think? So what do you guys got coming forward? Like, what's the future for Vertical Equity Partners?
So by the end of this year, we should be at 400 units. So we're still a little small. Next year, we'd like to get to 600, and then the year after that, be at about 1,000. That's our goal, and then keep growing from there. Of course, and that so that's our goal in 2 years and some change. That means we've got a goal in 1 year and in 6 months, and then so we understand that we've got to keep moving forward. Try to have something under contract. Try to recently been closing on something. Depending on how much we can take in. So we're always trying to maintain good relationships with brokers, finding new deals, and bankers too, to help us fund those deals, along with investors to help us partner together and work on them too.
Yeah, for sure. And then how are you guys typically finding investors? Just networking and
yeah, just word of mouth, really. Doing the right thing by we recently have been doing some refinances on properties, so we're able to have some capital payouts to some investors, and that makes everybody happy. Yep. And then, one of the things that really shocked me when I was much younger, in my early 20s, trying to raise money, was, if people have money and if you ask them, say, but, I was always amazed at how many times people would say yes. If I asked them for $50,000 or $100,000, if I had a game plan and I could show them how I could execute, just something that really amazed me. And now my experience is that those people who help fund, well, they have people, everybody knows somebody richer or more successful. And so they have friends who are also looking for avenues to park money, and everybody's appetite changes all the time. And so, but if you can be consistent, we try to be consistent and offering a good thing, pretty, reliable, and do what we say. And then our people, typically tend to come back with us. And so that it's always really helpful when they do.
Yeah, that's awesome, man. And you keep that up, and you guys will continue to grow there, and that's awesome. So what would you, Garrett, you've been in this business now, mobile home parks. Like, what would you tell the new investor that, something that you didn't know in the beginning that maybe punched you in the face at one time or another? What you're like, man, I wish I would have known that 3 years ago or whatever it was.
The potentials with septic tanks for one, and utilities. Really, we find some of these parks, they're so upside down, really based on utilities. The landlord, for some reason, has so many accounts in their name, and it's not needed. So some of these parks got $2,000 or $3,000 a month or so for a 30-unit park in unnecessary utilities. So finding ways to cut expenses, but still giving a good thing. We find a lot of times where the landlord pays. We like to put on water meters for units. We like to put them much on the tenants when it has city water. Of course, we have wells at a lot of places as well. But if I were saying, if you were to get started in this business, don't be afraid to do a lot of work. And that's just what it takes to do this stuff, because if you are, then the next guy, he's not afraid to do the work. That the only way I was able to buy places is by sometimes being there and somebody, seeing it and, telling them, hey, man, I was at my park today, and et cetera, et cetera. When people see you doing the right thing, so just try to always stick with what you say you're going to do. And you remember your residents there, they are your customers. You want them happy, because they help you pay your bills. So it's important to keep them happy also.
Yeah, for sure. And that's great advice. You have to be willing to do the work. And if you want, as we mentioned before, if you want to get in the business with no money, that is the way you can do it. You can be the sweat equity partner, which is what I did. And I think that's the easiest way to get into the business. If you're willing to do the work, you're competent, you're an honest person, you do the right thing, you can go miles starting with no money. So here's one of the last things I want to ask you here, Garrett. So I need one or two, if you have any, crazy mobile home park stories. Like those stories, it's like, really? Let's
see. Well, 2 weeks ago, we had somebody taking a bath and the bathtub fell through the floor. That was pretty, that was quite a sight. Park we just purchased. And we're like, gosh, I hope they're okay. We're like, how does that happen? How? Because you buy this park and you can't go inside of all the units. You you can't do it. And, sometimes when people live in these places, sometimes they want to, and sometimes they just don't have a lot of other options. And so, what goes on in there, you're just like, it baffles you sometimes.
Yeah.
We saw that,
Hold on.
and,
Before you, sorry, go ahead.
You're good.
So what was the call like? Like, hey guys, I'm in the sand. Come on.
By the time I got a text message picture, and I'm like, oh my God, I hope of a tub through it. Our handyman fortunately lived on site, and he was able to go there. She was okay. We had another place she was able to use in the meantime, and we're like, yeah, you can't go in here. And my buddy who manages the park, he goes, you're not going to believe this. I thought I heard it all, but would you believe somebody was taking a bath and it fell to the floor? Like, those floors hadn't been rotten for a long time for that to happen, like, gosh.
Yeah, for sure. Oh my goodness. Yeah, this is, oh my God, I could go on and on for days. It sounded like you were about to say another one. Were you going to say something else?
Oh, yeah. And then you always have parks that, have not a cat problem, but tons of cats. And, you come in some parks and you can count 30 or 40 cats.
Oh, yeah.
And you're like, gosh, and then you're like, well, what? And then there's always one or two people who feed them, and just they can't stop. You're like, oh my gosh, And, of course, it's always fun finding somebody who installed their own septic tank with a shovel on a weekend and a drum and some rocks, so they put their waste. And you're like,
did you get a permit for that?
Yeah, right. You're just like, oh, gosh. So it's up to code. I'm like, dude, it's a shrub. You can't. No, this is not good. So, always that kind of stuff.
Of course.
Always just crazy stuff where you're like, well, let's help you get it put in the right direction. That's what we're here for, is we try to take, D quality places and turn them into B plus type of places. That's what we try to do. We like mobile homes. They're good. And we want to make them desirable for families and people to live in, and we love the business. We want to stay in it for a long time. We're trying to we're trying to buy more and more and more. So it's something we find it's fun. You could do a lot of things for work. This line of work, it doesn't get boring. You always see crazy things, and it's very enjoyable.
Yeah, for sure.
Too.
Absolutely. And I definitely think there's a cat lady in most parks. And we even had until here recently a lady in one of our parks, and I'll just leave it at that. But literally, if you went and knocked on the door there, it would literally sound like a kennel. I mean, it had to be 20, 25 dogs in there. 20, 25 dogs. And then I saw come through on Grasshopper a few weeks ago, like that the animal control finally came, got him out.
I had one out in Lake Wales. I bought it mainly because it had a good amount of land and it had a mobile home on it, somebody living in it. And they had chickens living inside one of the bedrooms. And there was chicken poop everywhere. And I'm like, well, that's a first. I have never seen chickens inside of a mobile home.
Oh my gosh. Like, the smell in the house.
Yeah. I'm like, what are you guys doing? Yeah. You're just like, well, that's not what I would do, but yeah.
No. So what do you think? What do you think coming, looking down the road, 5-10 years down the road in this business? I mean, is there going to be anything to buy? I mean, is there are we going to get blown up by, a new kind of housing? Is there going to be an industry disruptor? What do you foresee?
We believe in mobile homes, and when the economy is doing great, people still move into mobile home parks. And when the economy is not doing good, of course, people really move into them as well. And we think if you can have some mobile home parks in some areas where you're in a busy area, and you can justify it, not some of these small outside towns, but some core areas, with some of the rule changes, you could be fit to have 50 units in a tight area, and over time you can change the style of housing, and it's the most affordable housing. And we like to provide good, affordable housing. It's the number one We another saying is, if you invest in the classes, you live in the masses. Invest in the masses, and you can live in the classes. So some of my buddies, they have these, extravagant rental houses where they're expensive per month. But if you don't have a tenant for 2 months, you're like, well, that's a big hit right there. So we like to stick with mobile home parks and apartment buildings where our average person goes to work most days, and enjoys living there, and ideally has a family or something like that. Those are our ideal places, and so we want to keep looking for those. And so we think there'll always be a demand for it. It's the largest based demographic of home ownership. As affordable housing. People looking. There's just so many people looking for somewhere to live, and if you can try to stand out and look good, you'll have people filling your park, hopefully.
Yeah, for sure. And I think in the markets that you're in, you're never going to have a problem. I mean, it's going to be just continued growth in these markets. And one thing you jogged my memory on the question I wanted to ask you: what is the main difference between operating mobile home parks and multifamily apartments?
So we recently purchased 2 apartment buildings in Lake Wales. One is a 10-unit, beautiful building. Another one is a 21-unit, also very nice building. And they were about 90% occupied, but their rents were really low. I want to say they were $650, $700 for a 1-bedroom, 1-bath apartment. Pretty nice. With apartments, we jump in the deep end. We put them to market rent right away. So we moved everybody to market rent, and we're providing market rent, not above, not below. And but you know what? All those, I want to say, out of those 31 residents, only one did not sign, and they might have had another reason for not choosing to live there. But you realize, well, what are my other options? Move my stuff on a weekend I don't want to do and pay basically the same thing for a place I don't know anything about. So with apartment buildings, we can turn them around right away. Mobile homes, they tend to take a little bit longer, and there's a lot more exterior stuff you've got to do with mobile homes too. Asphalt typically is the thing we try to do because it's like putting carpet out there. It's beautiful. So mobile home parks, they just take a little bit longer, and that's one of the main differences as well.
Yeah, for sure. I appreciate that. Well, Garrett, it's been great, man. You've been a great guest.
Great, Derek. I appreciate you, man. It's fantastic.
Yeah, for sure. Anything you want to leave our listeners with before you go? You could say no too if you don't have anything.
Stay hungry and always trying to learn. Try to read and try to get out there and find some deals, and don't be afraid to drive a property. We still drive properties most days. Before we put an offer on it, we just spend a lot of days just driving properties, and that's great. You learn a lot of things. I tell you, you can learn a lot of things by driving properties, and you might not realize it till years down the road. You'll say, I remember looking at that property, et cetera, et cetera. I've had that happen a number of times. And then you're looking at the one next door. So now you got a little bit of an advantage because you might know something. So just always be out there looking and trying to get, gain knowledge and trying to do the right thing, looking out to get bigger.
Yeah. And that's freaking great advice, because I forget I'd mentioned that to somebody one time, and they were like, oh, well, people are wasting time driving properties. I'm like, dude, that's dumb to say that, because the knowledge that you gain from doing that, just like you said. And now when someone mentions a park to me and the I-4 corridor, I'm like, oh, I know that park. I've driven that park.
I know the streets. Right.
Exactly. And I think that does give you an advantage, and you can move a lot faster in those markets as well. But anyways, Garrett, thanks, man. It's been great.
Thank you,
we would love to have you on again. It's at some point. We're doing some in-person podcasts we're going to start doing here within the next couple of months. So maybe we can work out one of those and do it in person in your office or something, or you can come up here. But
Sounds great.
For sure. So thanks everyone for watching the MHP show. We're going to be live. Well, not live, but we will be on every Monday with a new episode. Check us out on iTunes or Spotify. Please leave a like or comment. Give me a like, man. It's not that hard. Just click the button. It moves us up towards the top of the podcast listing there. So thank you all, and we'll see you next week. Peace.